Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends, and welcome to JCB Live 2021. Can we dream of anything better? Finally, a new year with a phenomenal, charismatic, charming, and very inspirational entrepreneur. Dear friends, he originally come from the fabulous country of Mexico. He happens to be the first master of wine. Very exciting and commending. As the first master of wine, he came to California, obviously to the famous School of Stanford, graduated, and on his way to Paris, had an awakening. And he'll tell us about that, which is a game changer in someone's life sometimes. And then he became a big wine authority in the wine world, started multiple companies, helping many into their journey to promote fine wines. He loves sustainability, organic, and biodynamic. And very importantly, last year in 2020, during this very difficult time, we all navigated without seeing where we were going, created an amazing charitable organization named Wine Unify that we were delighted to be able to contribute to and to continue to do so. So, dear friends, I'm excited to bring a very highly accoladed man by the Wine Enthusiast, by Jancis Robinson, by Decanter Magazine, and many others, the famous Martin Reyes. Woo! Bonjour, Martin.
Bonjour, Chancel, ça va? Ça va bien?
Ça va bien, santé.
Santé, oh merde. C'est magnifique que l'année 2020 est finie. On verra 2021, n'est-ce pas?
21, so, en español, ¿cómo decimos?
Como decimos que gracias que se acabó 2020, ahora en 2021. Cheers to 2021.
Cheers, cheers.
Yes.
And I know, Martin, you speak only 5 languages. Why only 5 and not 10?
Well, there's if we could think of the language of wine and the language of love and also the language of dorkiness, I think I'm up to 8 maybe. Oh, and the language of humor too. Humor is very important.
Exactly. So big highlights about 2020, and we're going to dive into your phenomenal life. But tell us maybe a little bit about what you co-founded and you co-preside, which is obviously the famous organization that we were all delighted to help in 2020 and is going to need help in the years to come.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me on, as well as my co-founder. Many of you know and have seen the chat you had with Dylan Proctor, a dear friend of mine. We co-founded, along with Mary Margaret Mechanic, the three of us co-founded Wine Unify last year, 2020, and it came out of there was already a momentum. All three of us had thought about, in our own different ways, to, instead of doing, this is how I say, instead of doing well in the wine business, you wanted to do good. And that good was taking shape for us in different formats. I wanted to bring in more education to Mexico, to expose WSET and see if we can find a second master of wine, of a real Mexican citizen, because I'm an American citizen, of master of wine eventually. But of course, education has to start. That starts from the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, Dylan and Mary Margaret had been conversing about, what that moment, remember last year with George Floyd, of course, Breonna Taylor. It was much more than that, right? But that was the match was struck at that point, finally.
Yes.
Many organizations came out of that, some of who we are directly related with, Julia Coney, Black Wine Professionals, and among others. There are many of them. And Wine Unify is the one that we co-founded. And it was really, it was a moment where we realized, all of us independently, education is the schooling. Education is a center to any advancement in a path, professional career, or whatever, because it opens up opportunities for you. Not just opens them up, but even makes you acknowledge recognize what's there, right? You become fluent in your future by having education. And then, of course, in wine, there are many certifications, many courses. We we found that the WSET, Wine and Spirits Education Trust, is a generalist, academic, anonymously graded, written exam that allows you to advance, and you can apply it to hospitality. You can apply it to any part of your, whether it's sales or writing or whatever. And so we use that as a vehicle where we give awards, recipient awards, level 1, all the way to a diploma. This year we're doing level 3 and diploma. Last year we did level 1 and level 2. And then of course those are stepping stone eventually for the Master of Wine program. But you can still, if you know about this from level 1, you can be a consumer who wants to be exposed to wine, and you can just take an entry-level course. And the idea was for this to be targeted for people who identify as minorities, underrepresented minorities, people of color, and so forth. And the industry is awake, has awoken. There are many things that happened last year that we saw, right, in the news and so forth. And so we wanted to provide a space of community, with education awards, as well as mentorship programs, as well as wine certificates, as well as the Coravan. People receive a Coravan when they're a recipient, so they can access wines and start learning, educating, and ultimately breaking down the perception that wine is for a select few, that it is naturally inclusive. I know I've been participating with you and with Dylan for a while, and we know. When I hear that, I now think of Alicia Towns-Franken, our co-founder, but I also think of you, because you have believed that for years. I know, I've seen your
Absolutely. Work. And I really want to thank you for co-founding this amazing organization, because the positive side of 2020 has helped us to rethink, re-strategize, reorientate a lot of the things we did. This is why we're celebrating today with 21 for 2021, of course.
Perfect. 20.
So you are the master of wine. So I'm going to ask you in this new year to describe this bubble and what it does to your energy, your inspiration, and what you want to do in 2021. Because it's great to turn the page.
Right. Well, first, I think this is a beautifully symbolic wine for reasons beyond just that it's sparkling wine, a champagne. We're celebrating the new year, number one. Number two, you have chosen an accessible appellation and an accessible price point. You could have done champagne. I bring in a champagne myself. We all love champagne, but they start at a higher price point, right? And there's a gilded aspect to champagne, which could be intimidating to some.
Absolutely.
Right? And if it's there and you can reach it if you want to, but you can also have an entry point of still high quality. So I love the fact that this on the nose behaves to me like a champagne. You have extended lease contact, not just your normal 9, 11 months, but you have a little bit longer, and you have some of that. I was very rewarded on the nose how this evokes the minerality, the chalkiness, that sense of what champagne varieties do, but outside Champagne, Crémant de Bourgogne, and it is a beautiful stepping stone. But not only that, it doesn't mean that it is still very high quality, very complex. You got apple, you got brioche, you've got toasted hazelnuts. You have a wonderful length for this wine. I think you really, frankly, over-delivered, and you bring the electricity and celebratory nature of sparkling wine, a very good price, without the trappings of luxury. They belong in a certain place, right? But then there's a stepping stone to the point where you can then decide where you want to go. So for me, this is a perfect encapsulation, a restart. We're restarting 2021, a new year, and we can reset and restart the expectations of people that want to taste something legitimately good from France with the méthode traditionnelle, right? That was a Spanish accent. Sorry, that was my accident.
Yeah, very well said.
with a lovely classic style. Come on, to me, this is perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, what a description. I'm gonna take this beautiful description and put it all over our websites. It's so well said. You said it better than I could. So, Martin, to continue a little bit on Wine Unify. So 2020 was obviously the occasion to start and to co-found for you this amazing, phenomenal venture for others. What is the goal now in 2021, 2022, and how can people help to contribute to this amazing and phenomenal action that you started?
You know, we are now grappling with that very question because we have gone through two successful awards programs, level 1 and level 2 at WSET. We are now going into level 3, which is for the more of the serious professional that already is in the industry or knows a lot about wine. And then, of course, diploma, level 4, much more significant. You're at the highest level of certification in the US outside of the CMS, right? For non-hospitality, this is based within the US outside before you get into the Master of Wine program. So we are building a community. We already have graduates, so to speak, of WSET through our organization. Now, we don't teach it. We provide the awards and the financial backing as well as the corking and the wines and everything, right? But there's a relationship there that's growing with a large number of people who are in, some of them in the wine business, some of them starting out, but people of color. What we're looking for in the future is we're trying to see what is now the adolescence of Wine Unify. We have an army of people that have gone through the program in the next 6 months, a year, and so you're absolutely right. We're trying to determine how this community continues to seed, continues to reshape the aspirations and the optics of wine. Right? You look at the screen in front of us here. And if you see, you have a very handsome white gentleman, Jean-Charles Boisset.
Oh, thank you for the handsome.
And a person who is a little bit darker, maybe doesn't look the part, right? I don't look the part of a wine professional. I get that. That's part of what drove me.
I think you really do. And you look very, very Franco-Americano Mexican. You look like a man of the world, specifically with a mustache. There's a little bit of that wine inspector Clouseau in you too, which I really like.
Well, thank you, JC. Jean-Charles, may I call you Jean-Charles or JCB? Qu'est-ce que tu préfères?
Easy, yes.
Okay. Anyway, I would say that the point there is that you say, if you're a Latino or if you're a Black woman in wine, you say, there's a community there. I don't need to, because here's the thing. There's already at a baseline, there's already an intimidation factor of wine for anybody who comes into it, unless you're born into it. And even when you are, you sort of expect, that there is a posturing, that there is egos, that there's glamour, and then there's a bit of there's a space where you put wine and people of wine professionals in a pedestal. We add to that if you feel that this is a white male dominated or wealthy dominated culture, which that's beautiful. We exist. We have, where I think right now we know that there is a beautiful relevancy of the vintner, such as yourself, and other individuals that play a role to elevate the experience of wine at the highest levels. But that cascades down, and if from $5, $10, $20, the point is that wine is accessible to everybody, right? And so the culture of wine should also be accessible to everybody. And so what we're trying to is eliminate that second level of intimidation, where you can be a Black hospitality individual in Napa and say, I belong just as much as my neighbor belongs, and reduce that level of intimidation by reshaping the landscape of who belongs, which is everybody. Doesn't matter who and how you look like and what you look like. Excuse me.
I absolutely adore it. And as you know, Martin, last year we created this wine, which is becoming a phenomenon. And I'm very pleased to announce to you that we're going to keep donating. In fact, $2 a bottle of JCB Unity that you see here is going to be entering the famous stores of Sam's Club. It's going to be very big.
Wow.
And the donation we're going to be able to provide, and this is a big news for you today, January 4th, and what you co-created, because we will be able to compound the donation we've made in 2020 to a much bigger level in 2021, thanks to the fabulous excitement of Patrick Mulfair, the wine director at Sam's Club, who saw what we were doing. He was with us interviewing John Legend in the Red Room, and he suddenly saw that bottle. What is it? We tasted the wine. He fell in love with it. And the next thing you know, we were working on this amazing launch that will happen around March or at the latest in April, which will be a pretty massive distribution in a sense that we were not expecting. And obviously a lot of the money will go to you, which we're very excited to encourage what you've started, and we really believe in it. So I'm very excited. As you know, we promote wine in over 95 countries, and from Africa to Asia to obviously Mexico, Central America, South America. And I need to tell you, and you should explain to everybody how you got inspired to join the wine world, but I've had the pleasure to go to Mexico every year over the last 5-6 years to promote wine, and I've never seen so many talented, knowledgeable people in the wine world in Mexico today. So maybe you can acknowledge that and then tell us, how did you get the bug of wine, your inspiration? It's a new year, and I think we should all hear about what made you get into it.
Jean-Charles, you bring up something that must be said. I must stop right now and reframe and say hello to my friends in Mexico, en todo el país de Mexico. Sí. There's an incredible amount of talent. It's generally has always been there, but it is growing in the community. People are evolving, primarily in hospitality, primarily in the sommelier community. Of course, there's much more beyond that, but that's really where Mexico's taken off in the restaurant hospitality side. Incredible individuals, too many. I can think of 15, 20 of them of who I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. And you're absolutely right. There is a renaissance in Mexico of wine producers, number one, but also wine professionals. And that percolates throughout the culture. That percolates the way that it percolates with my mom. She's in San Diego. She's from Chihuahua. And I'm going to be in Chihuahua in February, next month. And she's only drinking wine because of me. She did not have that culture, right? She's an elderly woman. And so it's young, number one, it's young people, and it's passionate, and they're learning beautifully and profoundly. So I think that Mexico is really where all eyes are coming upwards from that. Now, to answer your second question, so saludos a todos de México. Vamos a cambiar un poco del tema. This might also be something that resonates with the people who are listening, if from Mexico as well. When I thought about this question as you were speaking, Jean-Charles, I thought, I never put the two and two together, but there's a story that I don't often tell, and that is that my father was an alcoholic, and I have a complicated relationship with the memory of him. It's softened over the years, but it was difficult growing up. And I know that he always meant well, and part of what he did, which we'll get to later on education, has really defined me. That's the positives. But the negatives, of course, were that alcohol did not play a positive role growing up, up until for years, right? Until I was in college, where all of a sudden your perspective and the context changes. So therefore, I realize alcohol has been part of my life since I was born.
Yes.
Because I would normally say, oh no, I didn't come from a wine drinking family. My dad was an alcoholic, but I would not make the connection that ethanol has been there from the very beginning. But I've seen both sides of it, right? As a child growing up, but also now as an adult, and it's complicated for my mother because she knew that it was difficult back then. Of course. And I think that what's beautiful now is that I'm able to have a complete relationship with the memory of my dad. Mm-hmm. It's evolved. I deeply miss him. I wish that he would see my two little ones growing up. And by the way, my son, who's 2, is eating hot sauce like a champion. My dad never got me to eat hot sauce until I was 16, 17. And he's eating habanero salsa. Más, quiero más. Well, that's how he speaks, right? And then, and so it didn't come from my family. It came as a wine became a choice for me to find a beverage that has history, that has science, that has culture, that has mystery, that has storytelling, that the alcohol is almost incidental. It's much more than just getting a buzz. What I loved at that moment, and when I was an undergrad in Stanford, in Paris as an exchange student, was that I got hammered, to be frank. And that idea, that moment, yeah, it happens first time, like, wow, this is really something special. It's not there's the conviviality. It's around a nice table with some good food and friends. And since that moment, the conviviality of wine, the community, the fact that you look and you clink a glass. By the way, we'll drink the next red here soon. Your meritage. Yes, we should. That conviviality of toasting and eating and loving and storytelling and laughter. That was what the start was for me as a college grad. It was not something that was ever part of my home family life, but I wish sometimes I toast to my dad nowadays and say, hey, you'll have a beer, the beers that you drink, and then I'll toast with you, in spirit. And I talk to him sometimes when I tell him about my daughter and things that we're doing and so forth. And from that point, from that moment in college, I became a wine lover. Also, let's not be. I'm not going to pull any punches. I also found it to be romantic, and I was a young, single college guy, and I was like, hey, what do the ladies want? What do the ladies like? What can be good for a date or whatever? And so it was a beverage that I enjoyed, that I obviously grew into. And after Stanford, it's funny, you expect lawyer, doctor, whatever, right? And I just said, well, I like wine, and so I worked at a wine shop, Wine Globe first, then K&L afterward, where I was stocking shelves and ringing people up, and people were like, "Why did you go to the 4-year university just to be a store clerk?" And of course, it's much more than that, right? People who know K&L, they know what it stands for, and the evolution came from there. But so my background's been in retail for a number of years, among other things. Did I answer your question? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, you did, in a very inspirational way. And thank you for sharing about your dad and what he went through. And so when you look at wine, and how do you see us, one, making sure that people enjoy it with moderation as a cultural divinity or divine gift of Mother Nature? And then number 2, how do we make sure that we really make wine enticing to every culture in the world, and they don't feel, as you said so well earlier, intimidated or not included within that circle? 2 big questions. As we're drinking the Meritage, of course.
Actually, tell me a little bit about the Meritage, and then I'll answer that question, because it's a big one. So I got to think a little bit about it.
I know, I'm asking you a massive question in 2021 that the world has been trying to resolve since the beginning of time. But I know if someone can address it, you, of course, have the talent and you have the history for it, too. So this is a Meritage. So naturally, the merit of the heritage, what we used to call, I call it now, a Napa blend rather than a Bordeaux blend. But this is the alchemy of the 5 key grape components that we love: Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Syrah. And this is, the small lot series. We thought the very tiny volume we produce at Raymond of that 2016 vintage. And I believe there's only, 3,000 bottles produced. That's it. So less than 300 cases. So this is the vision of those small lot collection, is tiny volume production. I'll let you describe it later. after maybe you address that big question, because many people listening, obviously, as you know, Martin, are facing alcoholism in one way or the other, whether through parents, grandparents, husband, wives, friends, very difficult to deal with. And two, always want to bring new cultures into wine and never know how to. So please.
You know, you bring up that subject as well as health. You know, both positive health benefits and all, as well as health risks along with wine and alcohol. And I think what comes out from that right now, to think about this, is that the beautiful thing about wine is that nothing is straightforward, which means there's always a story.
Yeah.
And humans love story. We love storytelling. We love narratives. We love an arc, right? And number one, what else can you drink that has such deep amount of intention built into it? Even the wines that don't have intention have the intention to not be intense or storytelling. They're just about pleasure there, and the price point as well. So I'm thinking that as I listen to you and I hear about, I think about what the answer to that question is that it is a mirror. Wine is a mirror for whatever you want to do. If you just want to have fun and have a party, there's wine for that. If you want to be transported to a place without having to go there, you can go to your store and find a wine from Spain or Greece, or even Mexico, right, these days. If you want to learn about chemistry and expose yourself to that, you can do that too. If you want to think about design, if you're an artist or a graphic designer or even an environmentalist, there's farming, right? There's a story for every prism. I recently sent a pitch last year to a podcast. It's one of my bucket lists, something I have been dreaming about for 10 years. It's called Radiolab. And I don't know if you're familiar with Radiolab, they're a deeply thoughtful, curious, thirsty for knowledge show on the radio. And I thought, what could they do with wine? And so when I wrote to them and said, here, do something with wine. I want you to do it because it's the kind of subject that is multi-layered. In terms of why is there a snobbery attached to it? Because we build hierarchies in humanity as well as in wine. There's Grand Cru Burgundy, right? You're from Burgundy. You know how the monks did that way a long time ago under stratification, right? And then there's bottlenecks to access, whether you're a sommelier, whether you're a collector, whether you are a critic. And so, by the way, that's again where Wine Unify comes in, is we try to open those access points.
Congratulations.
Right? And then you say, well, but there's the beautiful science to it. There's things like the Meritage, for instance. Bringing it back to this, what's really cool about the Meritage and about this red wine here is I'm drinking the 17, by the way, which is a vintage, as we know, was born of struggle in Napa. It wasn't an ideal vintage by any stretch, and yet you can sense, I can taste here what is a cerebral kind of wine. You have a blend, so you're able to use all 5 grapes in Bordeaux to an assemblage, to make something that is still balanced, that has concentration, but that doesn't overburden you with tannins. And 17 could have been a tannic year for many places. I've tasted a bunch of them, and there's still there's some tension there. And then talking about things like, so I bring this up, tannins are the world's tannins are liquid Velcro, right? They stick to your saliva. They pull out mucins. They mess with the chemistry in your mouth such that you feel the raspiness. But there's a really cool science behind that. You call it liquid Velcro. All of a sudden, someone says, "Well, I know what Velcro is. It's an enzyme that attacks proteins in a specific way. That's why meat and wine and fat pair well, because it's attacking the meat proteins as opposed to your saliva mucins proteins. And all of a sudden, you're able to see this wine in a whole different way. I don't care who you are. That's kind of fun to think about that. To think about this being a time capsule, a snapshot between grape juice and vinegar, and it's just a snapshot. It's on a journey, right? It's in the middle of between sugar, a juice of grapes all the way to vinegar. We just happen to stop it right here.
That's right.
That small little thing awakens them, I would think, there's stories like that abound throughout there's stories of that for chemistry, physics, geography, geology, that could awaken the senses of somebody who may not be interested, or who may be intimidated, or who may say, "Oh, wine tastes the same." And there's all of these elements that I wanted to throw out to Radiolab, but I'm now telling you about this, that they're exciting. They pique your curiosity. What about super tasters and this whole subject of that element? What about why is it that when you chill a white wine or any wine, the acid is more pronounced? You feel the perception of acid differently. That's why we chill whites. What happens with bottle shock, right? And the role of oxygen, how oxygen is both a enemy of wine and a savior of wine. You can't have it. Both things can coexist. It's fascinating. And then you start talking about things like authenticity and the whole natural wine movement, which makes you and me, it forces us to challenge what we think is legitimate, what is real pleasure, what is the real purpose of wine, whether it has to be low sulfites or not. Why are we? So there's so many whys around this, that you find your own why in wine, and then you go after it. And that's one way, I think, for you to answer your question, one way in which people anybody who is remotely interested in having a good time, having a glass of wine, can find their own why within this libation. That's what I think, anyway.
Very well said. Congratulations for such a fabulous articulated answer. Now, on that note, you believe obviously in education in a big way. What did the Master of Wine brought to you? I mean, you're the first, Mexican descent to really qualify and get the degree. That's a big deal. As you know, we've interviewed many of your friends last year on the live, and it's been so exciting to listen about the first in China, the first in Japan, the first in Korea, the first in Hong Kong, and the first in India with Sonal, and many others. So give us your version of what it's bringing to you, and how you intend to continue to use it in your life.
For the longest time, that it was a goal to become a master of wine. And for the longest time, people ask, why do you want to? Why do you want to go towards this goal? And I think if we change the goal into something that is a tangible thing, a physical thing, like Mount Everest, right? People who climb Mount Everest, you ask them, why do you want to climb to the highest peak in the world? And I think for everybody, number one has a different answer. Who does that, right? But ultimately, they all have a relationship with the fact that once they reach the top, that is when their journey takes on a new chapter.
Yes.
It isn't the goal. At the time, it is the goal, but they know that there's something beyond that. They're not quite sure what it is until you reach that goal.
That's right.
And then you realize it's just the next chapter in this case for the MW, the education of yourself. I don't feel myself I'm actually a master of wine. I started making wine 3 years ago after the credential, right around the same time, and I realized I'm not a master of winemaking, that's for sure. Making mistakes, asking questions. I'm more of a master of asking the right questions about wine. There should be spread the word out. You
That's
put master here. You put master here. You put the wine over here, and then you add of asking the right questions about. That's the right credential, I think, the real credential, right? We're still students of it. So yeah. I think to answer your point in very clear, shorter term, I would say, when you become a master of wine, you can use that as a tool to tell yourself that you can achieve anything you want. It was my longest held goal for 20 years, 18 years of my life, and it's achieved. And so whenever my tire's flat, I can't call somebody, and I don't know what to do, and I'm 5 miles away from a gas station, for example. I don't know, I'm just thinking of this out loud. I would say, gosh, I'm stuck. What am I going to do? But if I did the Master of Wine, if I became master of wine, I could do anything. If I did the MW, I could do anything. If I did the research paper, I could do anything. That helps. It really helps you. We talk about positive thinking all the time. The biggest positive thinking thing there is achieving one of your main lifelong goals. But that's just one short answer. The longer one is that it's a journey, right? That education, learning about wine through the W set. Of course, I did the court intro and certified song too. Is that journey of education increases your network, right? It builds your network, builds your friendships, it builds your connections, it builds your credibility. If, in my case, you are a person who doesn't look the part, right? Who is not tall, white, older, more prestigious looking, right? So that helps you. I always think, I use this phrase a lot, education, in this case, BMW is like a solvent to remove that corrosion of the crust of preconceived notions of who can talk about wine, what the look is. If you have any credential, whether it's your intro or whether it's something else, whether it's the MW, whether it's the MS, I think it helps us have the currency, social currency, to just get around our business, just to talk between you, a client, and me, a professional who can help, whatever it happens to be, if it's a winery or if it's a woman looking to buy wines for her wedding, which is what I did for many, many years, right, as a retail
That's right.
So I think that it's multifaceted. And then eventually, my relationship with Mexico, ironically enough, became closer. The more I got up into the stratosphere of these credential exercises, the more now I feel like there's a bridge. And the bridge of a global bridge where I'm in connecting with people from Brazil, from Japan, as you mentioned, and of course from London, Sonal Holland from India, right? That network builds, and that network to me is what lights the fire of collaboration. You do Jean-Charles, so much in the wine industry, in part because you straddle, across the Atlantic, and you're able to leverage, and you have your network of both friends, producers, vintners, land owners, colleagues, business people, and then that's been expanding your mind since you've been a little kid.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's really it. It's mind expanding, I would say, and that mental expansion touches on philosophy. It touches on your professional life. It touches on your friendships, and it touches on your enjoyment of wine. It's mind expanding.
Well, it's so articulately said that it leads to the next question. Besides the wine is, you do all those amazing judging around the world. You participate in some of the most amazing writings on wine. What are your inspirational dreams to come forward? Where is it all that leading you to, you think? And what are your dreams, maybe?
Well, there's the dream right now is it's tied to my children. I think the answer has changed over the years, but one of the beautiful things, by the way, anybody who's watching, I would say, and if you don't have kids, I would say that this is not the only path towards happiness. And I want to make sure that I emphasize that
yes.
that this is that generationally we're speaking, whether maybe it's not your own daughter or son, but maybe it's your niece, nephew, or your friend's next generation, or your own generation when you're maturing to talk to those that are coming after you. In my case, it's my daughter and my son, and that's okay. And I would say that I find it surreal to think that when I think back when I was a kid, I have memories of both my mom and my dad, and I would say they didn't know when that happened, those memories happened, that they were going to be my lifelong memories. So in a sense that they built my past. I look at my daughter, she's 6 now, Matthias is 2. I'm building their past now, right?
Yes.
And in doing so, I take my work takes on a different meaning. I don't care to win awards necessarily, or to do something that benefits me. I do what I do in part, a large part of it comes to say, I hope my children are proud of me when I'm gone. I hope that they see my body of work, not my own body of work, but the body of work that is now 20, 30, 40 years from today,
Yes.
after I'm gone or whatever, that they say, my dad helped make this world a better place. That's why I'm into sustainability of wine on a exponential level in
For
2021
sure.
and beyond. But at the same time, he helped make the wine world a better place because it looks different than it used to. It's a rainbow color, and there's all this excitement around wine. It is an ethical farming practice. It is caring for the world, but also it is an industry of open arms for anybody who wants to be in it. My daddy played a small little part in that. So at the same time, my dream is to contribute to that change, to the evolution of our industry as a progressive, potent force for good, not just force for good wine, which, by the way, this Petit Syrah is extraordinary, but also a force for good uh, when it comes to farming, when it comes to education, when it comes to inspiration, when it comes to passion, when it comes to love, when it comes to family, when it comes to fiestas and parties, when it comes to connecting people across the world through something that is only 3 pounds and about a fifth of a gallon. That's really where, to me, my passions derived from the future and what my kids may eventually one day see after I'm long gone.
Well, and they will, because the co-founding of Wine Unified, your Masters of Wine example, your cultural influence is extraordinary. And as you said, the rainbow, not only of colors, but the colors of all around the world, and from religion to skin color to beliefs, is really the way to go. And what I love, and maybe you could touch briefly on this as well, is your deep commitment of what you and I share immensely as we met years ago on this topic, is sustainability, organic, and biodynamic. And maybe it'd be great if you give us a little bit of your understanding and belief of that as we go forward into this century that will be very exciting on that note.
Yes,
I know
I
we always
always
need more wine too. More
yeah,
Petit Syrah, which you'll have to describe shortly.
la petite Syrah, yeah, c'est génial ça, c'est magnifique. C'est plus
Merci.
que c'est un peu différent que je pensais, mais c'est énorme. Hein. Il y a un bon goût aussi. The Anybody who chooses to farm with a philosophy is obviously caring about being a steward of their land,
Yes.
right? And that stewardship, I think, permeates in a very holistic way the responsibility that we have, not just to create a product that is commercially successful and that we enjoy and that makes us money and gives pleasure, but there's much more. There's a whole other topic which you bring up well, which is it's not just about the human component, it's about the earth and our relationship with the earth. Most of the time, farming is, I should say most of the time, many times it is transactional. It is I take and I give, and I take and I give, or sometimes I just take. The worst types of industry is taking from the land and not giving anything back. And we're evolving somewhat, but of course, organic, with removing elements that are contrary to nature, right? And biodynamic is taking that and saying rather than removing artificial, we are injecting natural, right? It's sort of the complete loop if you're to think about it that way. And then there is the natural wine movement, which is obviously an offshoot of that, which then says we want nakedness and we want honesty in our wine. But all three of those elements are farming practices or winemaking practices. They're moving towards, and by the way, I think that they're a huge step in the right direction. If you will convert to organic or biodynamic, as one of my clients is Spotswood, as you know, they're a significant relationship I have, and or natural. There's obviously plenty of people who are farming winemaking rather with the basis of organic or biodynamic, there's a movement now towards regeneration, right? Regenerative farming, and also responsible winemaking with inputs. Wine is a very deeply energy dependent process, right? We need heat, and we need cold, and we need lots of energy, electricity, and gas, and there's all of these inputs that we are drawing from. So that's why I say about the transactional bit. But rather than it being transactional, it needs to be more holistic, right? And so the step towards saying it's not just about how much sulfite is added or not. It's not just about removing the fertilizer aspect because we're increasing the nitrogen cycle in the air, which is a whole another topic of planetary boundaries. Just mind-blowing stuff right there, right? Is we are now moving towards, I think sustainability actually is becoming too weak of a word, because there are certifications. You use the word sustainability, but beyond that, yeah, right. Beyond that, I think they're regenerative. Instead of saying reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, it's carbon neutrality. But even more than that, carbon neutrality, is a net zero economy, where it is an entire industry moving towards everyone respecting and a relationship between the earth, between your building and the electric grid, between you and your people. This is where Wine Unify elements come through, where it's triple bottom line. All these things are available for anybody who wants to dive into it. Things like B Corp certification, things like the IWCA, International Wineries for Climate Action. There is this growing engine. It's moving, it's picking up, where you're taking the ethos of farming and you are viewing it through the lens of sustainable and regenerative industry. And that's, to me, what's fascinating, is that these are all pieces of the puzzle. But ultimately, if you have a crisis becoming worse than it is now, it doesn't matter how many parts per million sulfites you add to your wine if we can't grow in that area anymore, right? It's just a piece of the puzzle. We have to think about the entire world before we start thinking about just one piece of it. I didn't say it completely eloquently, but I think you get the point.
It was very eloquent, and it makes so much sense. And the two wines we presented to you today are fully organic and biodynamic in the most sustainable place in Napa Valley, in Santa Helena and Rutherford. It's not yet on the label because of the vintage, but now in 2020, it is, because we passed all the certifications. So we're very excited. So now, Martin, sadly, time is of the essence, because we could talk for hours, as we have and as we will. And the year is young, so I know we're going to see each other a lot. But I would like you to really bring a big message to all our friends listening. It's a new year. You are the representative of an amazing country originally, one of the most graduated, rewarded, recognized wine professionals. You have your own wine company, your own wine consulting business. You're a great inspiration. You've won millions of awards. You believe in sustainability. You founded Eco Unify. I'm going to call it Eco Unify now. And so many great things.
You could trademark that, right?
What would be your message to all our friends as we're embarking on a new year? I know it's a big question, but at the same time, you have so many great ideas, and everybody is inspired by you already, but to further get everybody going into doing what they dream to do.
Something just came to mind right now. There's a concept it's a Japanese word called ikigai. It's Ikigai, I-K-I-G-A-I. And what's fascinating about that is, I think people who are watching this, you should look this up. You can see a frame of reference, a frame of thinking, where
That's right.
you write down four things, and you were to say four categories: what I love here, what I'm good at here, what the world needs over here on this side, and then at the very top, what you can get paid for. And if we're thinking about your career, your vocation, your job, your profession, whatever that happens to be, you look at those four objects: what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, what you're good at. If you create an exercise where you look at those four things, I've thought about this for a couple years. When I first heard of the term ikigai, I think that's probably one of our ultimate goals, right? Where you're able to make money doing what you're good at, helping the world in some way, something that the world needs, and something that you actually love to do. Because if you take any of those away, then it could be a mission of some sort, something you love and something the world needs, but then there's no money in it, right? Or little money. And if you take something you're good at and something you get paid for, but the other don't exist, then you're in a high-paying, heartless, empty job. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. Well, not only I know what you're saying, I feel, I sense, I really relate to what you're saying. So, Martin, thank you for introducing all of us to this new principle coming from Japan, Ikigai. We love it because it's four major ideas that are highly linked. And I agree with you. We've all done our resolution last year for this new year, and we may really, again, open the idea book or the creative book and rewrite them following your principles. So, Martin, I want to thank you so much for being with us on our JCB Live, for commenting on those great wines, for doing what you do, and for having been and being and continue to be such a great inspiration and leader and game changer in the world of wine. So I now want to wish you an amazing 2021. I know it will be one of the best years you've ever had in the history of your life. You have a new home, you have a great family, you're doing some great things. So to you and to all our friends for this new year who are with us to celebrate to 2021.
To 2021. Thanks, Jean-Charles. A bientôt. Hope this vaccine thing comes
out.
Yes, hasta pronto.
Hasta
I hope this vaccine comes out so we can actually enjoy in person and celebrate.
We cannot wait.